Welcome, everybody, to the weekly briefing. I'm Jim Benton, CEO at Chorus, and I'm here with Matt Finch, VP of Global Solutions Consulting at Maven Link. Matt, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Jim. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate your time today.
Likewise. And you're down in Orange County. Give me a quick update on just how life is for you and your company in that area.
Yeah, it's overall good. I mean, obviously we're all in the same boat here, working from home and nicely set up in in our home environments. We've adapted really quickly. We've got offices actually in San Francisco, Salt Lake, Boston, and a few other places around the world, and we're all in this thing together. So we're all all sharing the pain and in sometimes the joy and the fun times as well. So it's good.
Likewise, I took a couple days off, Matt. I went camping. So I was completely off the grid for about a day and a half once the cell phone battery died. Plugged back in last night. It's amazing how fast these news cycles move right now.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Scary stuff.
Totally. Matt, before we jump in, can you share just a little bit more about Maven Link yourself and the sales engineering team that you have there?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. So I'm the Vice President of Solution Consulting. So I'm responsible for our sales engineering or pre-sales function across the company. Maven Link ourselves, we're a leading provider of professional services and human supply chain automation solutions, which is kind of a fancy way of saying if you run a services organization, you really should be running it on Maven Link. So we're very proud of that. The SE team that I have there is 15 strong at the moment. We're across a number of different kind of departments and divisions mapping to our sales organization. So we have an enterprise team, we have a commercial team, we also have a post-sale team as well, working with our CSMs, which has been a great addition to the function as well, really supporting our clients throughout the entire client journey, as we call it. So yeah, it's a fantastic company, and excited to be given opportunities like this to talk to you folks. So,
well, I'm super excited to get your perspective. We have been combing through the data, and this week specifically wanted to talk about the secret weapon of sales engineers, and basically looking at three areas: how it's impacting and evolving in the sales process, how it's playing a key role in the demos, and lastly, the impact sales engineers are having on one deal. So looking at closed won versus closed lost data. So let's jump in. Let's start by looking at the evolving sales process. And one of the first data points we always show is just looking at overall productivity. So, and we've got the most recent week of July 6th here. We're seeing the dip. So, Q3 is getting off to a bit of a slower start with the holiday and then some of the summer softness here. Tell me a little about productivity and how things have changed as you've shifted your team to work at home.
Yeah, absolutely. We found that working from home dramatically increased the amount of activity we were doing. There was certainly an element of when we moved from home of the first few weeks of trying to kind of figure out, hey, our commercial business is fairly used to doing a lot of remote selling. That's the large majority of how we would sell. But our enterprise team, we're on planes every single week, jumping around the country and the world, seeing people. And how do we replace that? So the first few weeks was a case of trying to understand our new sales motion. But of course, the interesting thing is that, first of all, everybody's in the same boat, both our prospects as well as other people that we work with and our competition as well. So it was a really interesting transition to work from home. We found as those first few weeks passed and we all got set up and we all got our green screens and our cameras and our technology right, actually productivity really did go up. The amount of impact we could have on the sales process was actually significantly higher. So we ended up becoming, way busier. There's always that fear initially of, gosh, were we just going to fall off a cliff and not have anyone to talk to? But it absolutely seemed to be the opposite for us. So yeah, really excited.
I'm curious. You've got, on an enterprise motion, you mentioned that your team is out in planes weekly. What does the world look like now that you've adjusted and you've settled in on the work at home front? For your enterprise sellers, what's the motion look like virtually? How's it different than what it was before? How's the impact?
I'd say actually the motion has stayed fairly similar. The types of, we run a pretty well-oiled process, I think. The difference being you don't get that on-site relationship building. You don't get the hallway conversations, the lunches, coffees, maybe even the cocktails at the end of the day. So that's what we're having to understand and get used to, is how can we build the same quality of relationship when you don't meet someone in the lobby, shake hands, go to the coffee shop, talk before the meeting. You're straight onto the Zoom call, you're straight into the meeting, you've got to get straight to the point. So it's been really interesting to see how we've adapted as kind of humans and as people and as relationship builders. Our motion and our cadence has stayed fairly similar. We're doing the same types of workshops, the same types of discovery demos, trials, those kind of things. So,
Matt, have you figured out a way to build that trust, build that relationship outside of sort of the core sales motion? What we were doing in the lobbies, walking to the conference rooms, how have you started to crack the code of getting that mixed into the sales cycle?
Yeah, I think it's just a case of being conscious of it. It was just a total subconscious thing that happened before.
Yeah.
It was a natural part of the motion of turning up on site and seeing someone. We have to be very conscious of doing that. So we're sending marketing material. We're connecting more on social channels. We're just dropping in and seeing how people are. Just a quick phone call and asking how people are doing in these times. So it's much more of a conscious effort than it ever has been before, where you're just being a normal person and you get on with people and build a relationship.
Yeah.
We have to actively go and do that and turn a switch to say, gosh, I must remember to go and check in on that person, give them a call, or take them for a virtual cocktail. We've kind of had some interesting times where we've said, hey, join us for a cocktail hour, and we even send people food vouchers or order them some food on Uber Eats or something like that, and say, hey, let's go for that dinner that we were going to have. It's just where you've got a Zoom screen in between, but you're still sat there with your steak dinner.
That makes sense. I kicked off just an internal meeting last week where the first slide was just called First 15, and it was no agenda, no topics. It's just our leadership group. But let's take a few minutes just to talk whatever's on our minds. And I think you get that typically in an in-person meeting. It's hard when you're so programmed to sort of get into the flow. And for us, it was actually a great observation. After a minute or two, we got into it, and it was a great way to talk about things that probably otherwise would not have come up.
That's right. And you nailed it. You've got to be conscious that you've got to do that. You've got to set time aside specifically for that stuff that you just took for granted before.
Matt, we are seeing that the demos are starting earlier in the sales process. So this data here, if you look at February, it was basically in the second call that is where we would see the demo. And as you look at the months since following, demos are moving up in the sales process. They're happening more in the first call. And as we dig deeper into sales engineers and the role of demos, why do you think we're seeing the demo move up sooner?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think there's a mix of things happening here. I think if you've got a very solid process that you run where you fairly strictly do discovery and then move into some demos after that, I think we'll probably notice that it mostly stays the same. I think what this potentially also exposes is those organizations where that process isn't quite so tight. And the natural the natural tendency to use the demo as a prop early on can sometimes come in, but actually spinning that into the positive, I think we're seeing more of these kind of demo discoveries where traditionally we would separate those two processes, but they end up coming together. Certainly on our commercial organization, that would be something that it's happened all along. Like I said, the majority of the teams were remote anyway, but in our enterprise motion, this is new. This is something that we would do, discovery beforehand, then turn up on site and give the full thing. Well, now those two are merging. Also, I think we're seeing a shortening of sales cycles. I think that so a higher qualification. So we're kind of knowing a little bit earlier on whether we should carry on with this particular opportunity or not. So I think the work from home environment has got us laser focused on discovery, qualification, and kind of getting to the point a little bit. We're all on these Zoom calls all day, every day, right? So
what's your perspective?
We can shorten that a little.
Yeah, what's your perspective on a bit of demo bleeding into the discovery motion?
Yeah, I think that's okay as long as it's kind of very controlled. I think it's good sometimes to set context. But okay, this is the reason why I'm asking this question. I think it's a fine line though, because you often get caught where you say, hey, I'd love to hear all about your resource planning challenges because hey, but Maven Link solves this problem. Just jump straight in. So I think our team are very good at kind of keeping control over that kind of stuff, and I think that's where that's where the real skill comes into this, is using it to inspire further conversation and discovery is fine and great, but getting caught in then turning it from into a 45-minute demonstration, whereas it should have been a 45-minute discovery call. I think there's gray area in between that's totally fine if it's used in the right way.
Nice. I appreciate that perspective. Why don't we jump into supporting sort of the demo process, what this looks like when we have SEs involved.
Perfect.
And the first data point that we looked at is just the changing nature of demos. And specifically, when do they start in a call? So the chart here looks at how many minutes into a sales call does the average demo start. And we saw that from January to April, they started much later. It actually, instead of starting at minute 10, it started at minute 12. Now it's starting to come back down to sort of the levels we were seeing in Q1. What's your perspective of this?
Yeah, I think it's the initial observation that when we first got into this situation, we spent much more time asking if everybody was okay, and that was very genuine because both the person on the other end of the phone and yourself are sitting here in this new world, not really knowing what's going to happen and what's going on. There's absolutely a level of personal connectivity because we're all in this situation together that we've never really seen before. So I think that the empathy type conversation, like, hey, how are you? Because I'm not sure. Like, I'd really love to hear someone else's perspective on how they're doing working from home and what they think about what's going on in the world. As we've moved through that process, we've kind of gotten used to our new norm. We all know we're in this situation now. We're all as comfortable as we can be. I'd say comfortable, but maybe not quite. We're comfortable in our new normal. And I think we need to make sure we don't apologize necessarily for trying to get on with business. And, it's very important to make sure everyone's okay, healthy and safe and those kind of things, but as we move forward, business has to continue. The economy has to keep on turning. We need to, not be apologetic necessarily for doing our jobs. But equally, that empathy is still very important. I think when you're on your third, fourth, fifth call with someone, you've kind of moved away from that position of saying, asking how somebody is, because they probably get asked that 10 times a day by all the other people they speak to. So,
Matt, when SEs are involved in the calls, what needs to happen in those first 10 minutes? So before the demo kicks off, what is needed to make this a successful interaction?
Yeah, I think aside from that, human connectivity element, which is always important, I think it's really important for me to connect back to what we've learned so far and kind of why we're all here. So if you've done great discovery, you hopefully should have uncovered a lot of pain and challenges that the organization is facing. Maybe even start to imagine how your solution could solve those problems, and that's what you're going to demonstrate today. It's really important for me to always connect back to that first call. It's like, hey, everybody, you remember on our first call, we discussed these 3 main challenges that you have in your organization today. Let me tell you how MavenLink can help you solve those. And our solution consultant here is going to walk us through a day in the life, a storyline about how our solution can help you do that. So for me, it's a lot of humanization. It's not just, hey, everyone, we're going to demo today. Good luck. We jump straight in. We've got to connect together what we've learned in the first few calls, all of that great discovery, and bring it to life as we go into the storytelling of the demonstration that we're going to be giving.
As we looked at the demos starting a bit later, we're also seeing that demos are a bit shorter. They're about 15% shorter than they were in Q1. And we're tracking on the left here is both demo time, which is like website demo, and then deck using slides is the darker blue. So both are down. Tell me a little bit about the demos today and how they're different than what we were doing before.
Yeah, I think there's definitely an element of becoming more polished in this environment, becoming more laser focused. And I think the importance more than ever about great qualification, great conversations. I've certainly seen a real uptick in the quality of our activity. And I've seen this in other companies as well. So we're much more focused on getting to the point, I guess. We've got time limited calls. Again, think about turning up on site. You've generally got 2 or 3 hours. If you're going to spend, a day or two traveling to get to somewhere, you probably want more than an hour's time once you're there. Whereas when we're on Zoom, generally we do these in hour blocks, with a few exceptions. So, there's really an element of higher qualification quality, getting to the point a lot quicker, getting to the value a lot quicker as well across both our AEs and our SE teams as well.
Matt, you mentioned that before you do about a half day on site, where you'd be, doing a workshop with folks, whiteboarding, et cetera. Yep. Now that you're doing this all virtual, you mentioned you're getting to the point quicker, but how's the effectiveness of these sessions changed?
Yeah, they certainly have changed. And I think it's back to a point we mentioned earlier on. The effectiveness of the session itself is just as effective as ever. And in some ways, it can be more effective. But what we lose is the relationship stuff. Like I said, the hallway conversations, the pauses for coffee where you wander to the coffee machine together. That's what we miss. The actual effectiveness of the workshops we found with the right technology, and with the right type of agenda, and we know exactly the plan to go through, we can make them just as effective as we have done before. The key thing is engagement, and what you have the benefit of doing when you're in a conference room together is generally out of kind of overall politeness. People might close their laptops or not look at their phone. You've got those technology distractions when you're on Zoom, because most people, like I have here right now, my Zoom window here, but my email's here and my Slack's here, and oh gosh, look, there's a message. Right. So, that's something that we have to try and make sure that we maintain high quality engagement. We can't just rest on the fact that they're locked in a room with us for 2 hours and they can't escape, because you can escape. You can escape very easily, but look like you're still engaged. So, totally. It's something that we try and track for as much as we can.
One of the other aspects we wanted to look at was just the impact of having an SE on a call. On the left is looking at just the duration of the demo. So when we have SEs, they're a bit longer, as well as talk time on the call. So when we're doing demos, the SE talk time will increase 10 minutes. When we're joining and there isn't a demo, it's down about 10 minutes. What's the role of the SE in these demos?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, and if I certainly train all of my sales engineers that I've worked with, and I've been trained in the past in this way as well. A great demo is not a monologue, right? A great demo is not just, I'll see you in 45 minutes for questions and I hope you get all of this that I'm going to talk about. A great SE is somebody that engages in conversation, really extracts more information, and we talk about something. So whilst you might have this very elaborate story that you're going to tell that gets to this amazing point right towards the end, I think there's very much more of a cyclical nature to that. So tell a brief story, get to a great talking point, and then talk, right? And then engage in conversation. Like, hey, everyone, in the last couple of minutes, I've shown you that Maven Link can achieve this for your services organization. Let's talk about how this might impact you guys. What do you think? So, a great demo shouldn't be a monologue, because you might as well have just sent a video. A great demo is one that really engages conversation, almost where you're talking as much as you're showing the software. So, it doesn't surprise me that the data tells us that. So that's great.
Well, speaking of impact, let's look at the role of won deals when we have sales engineers involved in the interaction. So first is looking at just how many calls do SEs join. So we saw that it's up, from January to June, it's up 25%. So significant increase in SEs joining calls right now. Why do you is this because of we're traveling less or joining more? What are some of the reasons that are driving this?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. We've certainly found on our lead development side, it's actually easier to get hold of people. So we're connecting with more folks in our kind of buyer demographic. Therefore, in theory, we're having more first and second calls. So there's more volume. We've certainly seen an uptick in overall SE activity, client-facing activity. I also think that there's definitely an element of being able. It's much easier to connect over a 30 minute or an hour Zoom call than it is to commit to a full day on site. So we're having more of them. We mentioned workshops earlier on. Ours traditionally would be a half day or a day. Now we can get them done in a couple of hours because we've got the efficiency of the technology. So effectively we can do more, and as long as we've got more coming inbound into our organization, we're connecting with more people, then the numbers go up. It's a numbers game. So at the end of the day, the more people we talk to, in theory, the more people we can help with our solution.
It's interesting. The productivities are up, and the key that we'll all be watching is how that productivity plus the relationship side, how those two need to come together, because we're down on relationship, up on productivity, and how to get these in more balance. Yeah. We've also wanted to look at the data and specifically look at where SEs are participating the most, where they're having the largest impact. So to no surprise, 50% higher participation on enterprise class deals. But what does it look like when we have SEs involved in SMB and mid-market deals?
Yeah, definitely. And it was interesting to see this data when you shared it with me. I think this is good because this should be by design.
Yep.
So what you really would want your team to do, your SEs to do on the very small deals is be reactive to deep technical things much later in the sales process. You would expect your account executives to perform the majority of the SE type activity on the very small deals. Of course, that then ramps up over time. Your sales engineers are high impact, high worth individuals. You want them on the biggest, highest quality deals. But also, we need to be helping on the smaller ones as well, but in a much more targeted fashion. So great to see this data. From our perspective, we definitely see exactly the same in our organization. Like I said, by design, we want them to be working on the highest value deals with the highest impact, with the highest likelihood of closing. And also think about the cost of acquisition as well. If we've got a very tiny deal with just 5 seats or 10 seats or something like that, we don't want to swarm it with this great SE support that could be working on 10,000 seat deals. So that's in theory by design.
Well, speaking of just the impact, this slide's amazing. So this looks at how many deals progress when sales engineers are involved, and specifically looking at we see a 20% increase in deals progressing to the next stage in the sales process when we keep SEs involved. It has a big impact.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is my bias for my world comes out here, and well, of course that's the case, isn't it? Yeah. But I think what we've noticed is that if you put your SEs on the best qualified deals with the highest likelihood of closing, clearly you're going to have that level of success. What this tells me and what this drives for me is the importance of great deal qualification. You want to be putting your SEs, this valuable resource, and ratios are often 2, 3, 4 to 1 versus account executives. You want to be putting your SEs on the best qualified deals that have got the highest chance of winning. So this to me just drives the need for real great qualification. If you put your SE on a deal that is not well qualified and doesn't have a high likelihood to win, you're not going to see this type of result. So great validation of the role, and pleased to see this type of data out there as well. I'd be worried if it was the other way around.
yeah, definitely. Well, it shows the impact, and it just shows also right now, I think, having multiple people on a call, better ways to build the rapport and to broaden how you get to know a company right now, how you get to know a team.
That's right.
Matt, lastly, what's your perspective? What's your outlook on Q3?
Yeah, I think it's for us at MavenLink, it still continues to be very bright. We're seeing a real steady performance across our commercial organization, and now an uptick in enterprise. And I think logically that's because the smaller the organization, the more agile it was able to be at the start of this process. Now our larger enterprise style prospects that we would talk to, their motions have changed internally. A 10,000 person organization suddenly working from home is very different to a 30-person organization working from home moving forward. So, for us, commercial has been a top performer the whole way through, and our enterprise motion, the flywheel is really now starting to spin. We feel very optimistic about the second half of the year here at MavenLink. And I think what's interesting for us is that MavenLink as a technology helps people work from home, right? We're moving people's project and resource execution into the cloud. Well, that's something that if you were doing it, manually or some manual process is going to be, very difficult to execute if none of you are all in the same office working together. So, we see ourselves as a real enabler of this world, and as we settle into this environment for probably quite some more time, I think it's going to be more important than ever to look at solutions like ours, like Chorus, like Zoom, all of these technologies that help us work from home much more effectively than we were able to do before. So yeah, feel very optimistic about the second half of the year.
Well, hey, Matt, I appreciate you sharing your perspective. It's awesome to go deep on the sales engineers, the solutions engineers, and just the impact that we're seeing. All of this data will be live on Chorus.ai under the weekly briefing tab, so you can go in and check it out if you're listening today. And Matt, Finch, really appreciate it. Thanks so much for joining us.
For having me, Jim. Best of luck.
All right, cheers. Bye.